Hey everybody, it's Brett Loveday here from Thintech. Guys, girls, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're all well. Listen, I'm going to be doing a series of videos, and this is the second video that I'm doing, but this is a video that I feel quite passionate about, actually. So, yeah, this is all about Citrix. So, if you guys use Citrix, and especially if you're using Citrix for virtual desktops, then you need to listen to this, and you need to. Thintech, we specialize in Citrix, especially in Citrix virtual desktops. We've been doing it for many years, and we've done hundreds of thousands of desktops. Yeah, I personally have been using Citrix since 1999, since when it first came out. So I've written this guide, and this guide is called the Mega Guide, and it's a process that I've developed that guarantees success in rolling out virtual desktops using Citrix. If it's your job role that's responsible for the successful rollout of Citrix virtual desktops, then you need to listen to this. And you've got to recognize that what you're doing is so profoundly impacting to the business that if you get it wrong, you're kind of putting your own job at risk. So following this guide is my bulletproof methodology that pretty much guarantees success, providing you follow this plan religiously. This is how I do it, guys, and I hate to use cliches, but I'm going to say the best way to start this guide is to think like an architect. And I use the analogy like rolling out virtual desktop projects is a bit like having a house built. You need the architect, you need the builders, and you need ongoing maintenance. Now, each role has a distinct set of actions, and you must maintain authority at each stage. And I will cover these in more detail later. So first off, you need an architect. An architect who's going to own the project, who's going to design the project, who's going to produce the detailed designs, what they call the blueprints, and they do environmental check-in, ensure that any prerequisites that are needed are in place. You also need engineers. You need engineers who would deliver exactly what the architect has designed, but you need to do it in a non-aggressive way and make it absolutely clear that the engineers are in no way or shape or form allowed to deviate from the architect's design without following the process. And the process will be that the architect will not take any responsibility if anything goes wrong if the engineers don't follow their plan. It's as simple as that. So make sure that the architect takes responsibility by making your engineers stick to the plan. And if changes are needed, then you need to get the architect to update the plans and the blueprints for the engineers to deliver. Make sure your support team are fully trained up. This is also the responsibility. And so you also want to make sure that your support team are fully trained up before you roll out a single user. Now, this is often one of the most overlooked parts we often see in many Citrix projects, where most of the focus is placed on the architect and the engineers and the project managers for the delivery of a project, but realise the most important part of this are for the people that are going to be rolling this out and running this daily. So encourage your architect and your engineers to engage early with the key business staff, including security, networking, service delivery managers, and make them work with them early in the projects. Let them be involved at the design stage and make the architect realise and make it clear that the architect is working for these guys. So this is the service delivery manager, the networking guys, the security team, and the key business owners and your key stakeholders. It's the architect's role. Make sure that he designs the systems based around your internal service level agreements, not his own. Now let's dig into this a little bit deeper. Let's talk about the technical architect role. Now the role of a technical architect solution is a highly challenging role. They should have years of experience in doing similar projects and are really good at their job. They should not only be highly technically, but they should be a great person as well. When you're looking for an architect, choose one that can demonstrate They have at least 5 or 6 years experience, and a good architect, as we all know, has 2 ears and 1 mouth, because one of the best skills that an architect has is to listen. I find so often that people just don't listen. Okay, find someone you can trust, find one that listens, and find one that takes full responsibility for what they are paid to do. And it's this role, I really recommend that you outsource this to an independent partner. Don't use the vendors or Citrix or Microsoft. Understand, you're not delivering the vendor message here. It's about designing solutions that's right for you and not for the vendor. So paying an independent consultant to do this is definitely going to be in your benefit, because it really saddens for me to tell you that I have seen time and time again where customers have got the vendor in only to end up with solutions that are massively overpriced. And I feel I have a moral duty and responsibility to stop that. Okay, it sickens me. I'm sorry, it does. I hate it. How many times have I gone into customers that they are using a premium version of a product, but they're not using a single premium feature? I hate that. I really, really hate that. And I hate see people wasting their money. So that's the good thing about being independent, because you can advise appropriately. So what can you expect from a senior architect? You're asking for a lot from them, really. And you ask them to take full responsibility for the overall design. And my advice is you get them to work this way. You go through a bunch of phases. And the first phase you're going to be doing is the discovery phase. And this is where the architect needs 2 ears and 1 mouth. And it needs to engage with all levels of the business. And if you really want to get tough, and I highly recommend you need to get super tough with the architect, you can force them to take responsibility of the design by agreeing stage payments with them at key milestones. So I highly recommend you do that. Get them to produce full statements of works, and it must include, I recommend that it has the following headers. When they write the statement of works, it would always have an executive summary, a high-level design document, the requirements as specified when he sits there and listens to you properly, the methodology he's going to be using, the virtual desktop and application delivery process, the resilience design, the user access design, how user personalization is going to work, and including all the physical and virtual sizing parts that are going to make up the document. In there you can define where the milestones can be set, and it's the architect's responsibility to define the roles and responsibilities. Who's going to be doing what? And in there should be stated the timelines and the resource requirements. And finally, it should include the licensing that you should procure for this. So using his consulting skills, use the architect to recommend the right type of licensing so you don't overpay for the right level of licensing. And finally, obviously, it's up to you, down to you guys. So the architect should not do anything until you've signed that document, because it's not a legally binding document, as we know, because it's just basically a statement of works. However, the architect should not move on until that document has been signed off by you guys and all key stakeholders have approved the actual design. Now, another function for the senior architect is to produce the detailed design document. Okay, the detailed design document it's a low-level design. Okay, and it's responsibility for the senior architect to produce that low-level design. And he does that in conjunction having technical workshops with all of the key internal IT stakeholders and technical staff, making sure they work very closely with, especially with the security department early on, and especially with the service delivery managers I found, because these are the guys that are really going to be impacted. First and foremost, I've been in situations where you go along with a design, you haven't engaged the security team, you get it all approved, and then it gets vetoed by the security team because there's something in it they don't like. Okay, that is the fault of the architect, because he has not engaged the security team early on in the process. So the end result is we were looking for a low-level detailed design document, again signed off by all key stakeholders. And keep in mind, guys, this what I'm telling you here, and apologies if this is information overload, but this article was written to say to you, if you're responsible for rolling out Citrix virtual desktops, this is a plan that I'm going to give you that will guarantee your project will work. So another thing for the solutions architect is the environment configuration. So once the low-level design is all signed off, it is then the senior architect's responsibility to ensure that all the prerequisites that he needed, as stated in the statement of works and the low-level design, have been completed before moving on to the next stage. And these include things like hardware provision, network configuration, the security model, and a pre-population of the configuration management database. If you don't know what CMDB is, CMDB is a configuration management database. For us, that's a glorified spreadsheet. But what he would do is they form part of the blueprint, and he can pre-populate that, including host names, IP addresses, and every component that needs to be built out. So this is all bundled up in a statement of works, a low-level design, and a CMDB, and this is what is handed over to the engineering team for the delivery. So think of that as being the blueprint. Now let's talk about the engineering team, because these are the guys that are actually going to be doing the work. It shouldn't be the consultant, really. The consultants are not cheap. So you don't want them doing engineering work. So you can use a lower grade engineer to absolutely follow the plans as provided by the consultant. So the engineering team will be responsible for the installation as provided by the architect, updating the CMDB as they go along, doing functional testing, then they do the application packaging, and they do testing, they do performance testing, and then they any correctional and tuning that needs to be done, and then they then do some end user testing and do some functional testing. Yeah, and any issues that they find, they should create a snagging list, and it's the engineers team responsibility really to start training up the third line support team. So if a senior architect has done his job well, the engineer team should have a simple set of tasks they need to follow, the blueprints. For the engineers, so like the solution build phase is at this stage that the engineers will build out the solution exactly to the plans provided by the solutions architect. And these are the areas you will need to control. Okay? The installation must follow exactly to plan, and this is where you need to be your firmest, because when engineers talk to engineers, they have a tendency to deviate from statements of works. I'm sad to say I've seen it so many times. This is where it fails, guys. You have to be strict without being offensive. Make them understand that you are placing the responsibility of the success of the project down to the senior architect, and they must stick to the design. Allow room for them to change, but create a simple and quick way where they can communicate with the senior architect to approve changes. The architect will update the statement of works, low-level design, CMDB, get them signed off again by giving them to the business owners, and then give that back to the engineers to delivery. So have good version control, and making sure obviously everything is approved in this whole process. Now, following on from this, make sure that at least once a day that the engineers get used to updating the CMDB with a day's activities and any change logs. Okay, and once they've built out the core solution, it's the engineers that will do full functional testing, including failover testing. I mean, how many times have I seen solutions where the solution on paper is designed to be resilient, but isn't it a miracle that something fails when something breaks? You know, something that's out of your control. So you should always design a solution with failure expected, and it's no point saying it's just resilient. You need to prove it. And really, and at this stage, when the engineers rolling this all out, they can start documenting the migration process, you know, with some basic tests. And that includes how we're going to migrate user profiles from the physical to the virtual desktop. And we've got some really neat tools that we want to give you to make that as easy as possible for you. We're moving on because one of the most difficult parts in delivering virtual desktops, you know, virtual desktops are easy. It's when you want all the apps working together. This is where you have problems. So there's a whole separate paradigm and process for application delivery. In fact, I've got an entire video which I could create around application delivery processes within Citrix environments, and that I will do that video at a later date, but we're just going to breeze over it today. So we're at a position now where we've basically got a virtual desktop, a functioning virtual desktop that's fully resilient, but it is absolutely useless because there's no applications in it. So included in the low-level design should be a detailed breakdown of the applications to be installed and what technology they will be using, whether that's app-free, layering, or whatever other technology we're going to be using. So we expect the engineers to deliver the following. Okay, so we expect them to package each application. And when I say packaging, I mean packaging. This is where you create a custom MSI. Don't just go next, install. They generally fail. Okay, there's so many badly written applications out there. So you need an application packager who knows what he's doing. Now, I've had jobs where 700 apps is not unusual. I've had one that had 3,000 applications. But generally, most local authorities we work with, 70 to 100 applications is not unusual. Okay, so, and if you think you're going to get one image that's going to work with all of those applications neatly, forget it. You're just going to make a rod for your back and your life will be hell. So the more that you can strip out from the core desktop and have that separated and virtualized elsewhere, the easier your life will be going forward. Okay? One of the toughest Citrix installs to do is to try to build an image that works for pretty much everybody. And this is where you've directly installed the applications on the core image. I highly advise you don't do that because your life will be hell. Okay, so because any change to any application is going to require a complete redistribution of the desktop to everybody. And I'm going to say to you, stop. There were much better ways of doing that. So I try to keep the applications that are installed into the base image to a very, very bare minimum. And I classify those in tiers. And so a tier 1 application like Microsoft Office, there's a prime example, everybody's going to have it. Yeah. You may well have a tier 1 application that everybody's going to be using that sits outside the Microsoft bracket but needs to be in the core build. So we leverage tools like app-free, published applications from other Citrix farms. There are loads and loads of ways that we can make sure that your base desktop is as clean as possible. And you will thank me for that at some stage. And I will produce a separate video just on that subject alone. So like I said, it's the engineer's roles for the installation, the packaging and the sequencing of each application, making sure the CMDB is kept up to date, and testing those applications and making any remediation work. So one of the key stakeholders within this is we tend to pick something called a senior user, and a senior user is going to be helping us to test these applications, because we're not going to know how your applications work. So you're going to need to allocate one of your senior members of staff or to be involved in this project, who can test the functions and features of each application. Because one of the things we're going to be talking about later is the profile management solution, and how we've created a tool called TPMM, and it's completely free, guys. And TPMM is a really, really neat tool that we've written that it has completely eliminated the need for profiles. Okay, so we don't need profiles today, and we've just got this neat little tool called TPMM. It's completely free. So I say to you, how can you have profile related issues if you don't have profiles? As simple as that. So, like I said, I've been doing this for a very long time, and I see so many problems, you know, and the top 3 problems that I see with Citrix are performance issue being number 1 issue, profile issue being number 2, and the third one is printing problems. It really annoys me that we still see printing problems today, but we do. So the profile issue we've dealt with 100% because we've eliminated profiles, and we'll cover that later. Now, some of the tasks that the engineers do, unfortunately, you guys need to take responsibility for. And this will be 1, you provide the engineer installation media, installation license keys, and installation instructions. They are mandatory prerequisites for any application that's going to be deployed to your Citrix environment, and it will be your responsibility to provide that information. It is also your responsibility to determine the priority of what applications you want done first. It's not ours, because we would just guess, because if you don't tell us, we just do it in alphabetical order. So we'll be leaning on you and asking you, what is the priority of the applications that you would like to install? Okay, and like I say, it's also your responsibility for to provide testers, application testers available, because I quite often find this is the biggest hurdle we've got. We've built something, but you've got nobody to test it, and that can delay projects. We are working together here. We both want the same objective, which is for this project to be a success. So in order for that to be true, there needs to be give and take on both sides. We're asking you politely to make sure that there is somebody available with a reasonable notice to test each application as and when they're being packaged out. And the final one, obviously, is the timelines and what expectations are set, which should be set by yourself. So, because this is just a scaling issue for us. If you say to us, I need this delivered in 3 months, for example, but when we scope it all out, it works out to be, 6 months work, then that's fine, because we could just allocate more engineers. So if you have specific timelines to particular projects, again, that would be a responsibility that we will put back to yourselves. Right, so now we have a desktop. You know, imagine at this stage now, you've gone through all of that process, and you now have a desktop that is fully tested, and each application is signed off. Okay, because that's, again, a responsibility we put back to you guys. You sign off each application as and when it's done. And everything is production ready. But you're still not ready to go, okay, because it's still not fully tested. So there's a couple of things we need to do before you can roll this out to your end users. And these are the final steps that you need to do before you let the users loose on the system. Number 1, you do a full functional reliability test where you stress the system by artificially loading the system up to the point of failure, so until it grinds to a halt. And so then you know the boundaries and the limits of the maximum number of users that each virtual machine and each physical host can support. You know, you can use third-party tools to do that, or to be honest, you could just set up a test group and hand it in. There's loads of ways of managing that, okay? And before you go live, you just need to review the snagging list, because you want to make sure that you're delivering an error-free as possible environment. So if there are any items on the snag list that have not been completed, don't put a user on it. Okay, simple as that. If you, why would you put somebody on a system that you know is broken? Okay, so really important that you keep a snagging list, and really important that you've got a project manager in this, and is making sure the project manager is on top of the engineers to make sure that there is not a single item left on the snagging list before you roll it out. Now, and again, before you roll anything out, it's essential that your third line support team have been trained up with all the necessary skills to be able to support the environment that you're about to deploy. Okay, so they know how to support it on a day-to-day basis, including maintenance, packaging, and everything. Okay, that's one of the engineer's responsibility. So what the engineer does, he bundles everything up. So he bundles up the low-level design, training manuals, operations manuals, the configuration management database, and it hands those over to the service delivery manager. And then it's only then can you start the rollout. Okay, and I highly recommend that you roll this out in phases. And we typically find that we choose department by department. A little bit of responsibility back to you guys. You need to make sure that the engineers have done a full and proper handover to the support team. That includes the full operational manuals, the training manuals, the CMDB, to ensure that your team can run with this. And before you roll out, you need to sign off to say that every item, because there is a sign off sheet that goes with this, every smart deliverable that was defined in the statement of work. So you all know what smart objectives are, so I'm not going to teach you to suck eggs. That you can tick off and say yes achieved, yes achieved, yes achieved. Okay, so you have to sign that off. And another area that we really highly recommend is that you do set up tiered level admin access to the environment, because you just don't want rogue engineers to make rookie errors. So really be careful who you give sort of full admin privileges to this environment. So we have a canned solution for you where we can give you a solution for permissions required for first and second line team and the third line team as well. Yeah, we're going to make it the responsibility of the help desk to take ownership of user migrations, profile migrations, and the creation of the end user training manuals. Okay, so we will give you all the tools needed, but we're going to put a lot of responsibility on your help desk to take some ownership in rolling out Citrix, and that way you get much more engagement with your staff in general once this product is finally rolled out to all users. So just a full overview. So if we put all the steps together, and if it's your responsibility for this to work, and you will see then that this is a bulletproof plan that guarantees success. So choose an architect, guys, that you can trust. Choose an independent architect. Do not choose the vendors, because they will not have your best interest at heart. Trust me. I'm sad to say that. Okay, it's true. And I think we both know that. Make it the technical architect's responsibility for all elements of the design, and that includes statement of works right from the very beginning, just understanding what you need. Make it the technical architect's responsibility to design this whole solution with technical workshops, produce detailed design documents, and any configuration and prerequisites should be clearly stated. And it's technical architect's role to make sure that the environment that is going to be installed into is actually fit for purpose. And he needs to look at all areas of that, and that includes hardware provisioning and network access and security. It's the technical architect's responsibility for that. So use one that's independent, use one that has 2 ears and 1 mouth, but don't really use the engineer to do the delivery piece. Make sure he writes the documentation, so the engineering team, because technical architects are not cheap. So you want him to do all the work, but you want your engineering team to do the delivery work. Okay? It's the engineering team for the actual implementation of everything that the technical architect has designed. We recommend you do it twice. One, you produce a proof of concept environment that follows all the guidelines as specified within this whole methodology from end to end. This is where you do the solution build out, you install, you figure it all, you update the CMDB, you do functional testing, you do migration testing. Yep, this is all in proof of concept. You do the packaging, you do the installation, you do the functional testing, and you do performance testing, and you do any correction and tuning, proof of concept. And also do user acceptance testings and snagging, and again, all under a proof of concept. And the reason I say that is because that's only going to be a small environment, okay? Because once you've done that, you then rebuild it all in for production, because your proof of concept environment will become your pre-prod environment. Because if you're going to run this in a large production environment, if you're going to want to make any changes, you're going to need a replica of your live setup that only testers gain access to, but it does need to be identical to your production environment. So if you treat them the same, at the end of this, you do end up with basically 2 installations of the same thing, but one is being used for production and everybody's using it, and the other one is there, changes are needed, you make changes to the your pre-production environment following all the guidelines, documentation, update CMDB, blah blah blah, change control, testing, and once that's confirmed to work okay, then that moves into production. Okay, and again, these are tasks that you can hand over to your engineering team. And finally, the support team, because make it the support team's responsibility for the clients, the operational training for the clients. Get them to produce the training menus. Get the first and second line team, do user migration, rollouts, etc. They do basically the majority of the work. These are going to be your internal teams. These are the guys that are going to be doing picking up the call whenever there's a problem. So the more engaged they are with this project, the more engaged they will be as a project as a whole. And it's only then that you really start rolling out the users. So user migration, user training, user rollout should be done by your support team and should not be done via the architects or the engineers. Again, because that's probably 90% plus of the work. So you're only really going to be using external consultants really for the technical architects and the engineering piece. The main rollout, which can save you so much money, you can do internally, providing your team is trained up properly. Right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope this has been useful to you. One of the things I do ask for is for feedback, okay? And yeah, if this has been useful to you, or if you feel I've missed something, please add a comment, let me know. Yeah, if you want to find out more, my name is Brett Loveday. I am the Managing Director of Thintech. I'm very easily contactable, guys. You can contact me here on LinkedIn, or you can email me, brett.loveday@thintech.co.uk. And we'd just love to hear from you, okay? So if your responsibility is to roll out Citrix virtual desktops, then I would say to you, you really need to speak to us. Right, I'm going to end it there, guys and girls, and I'll speak to you all again very, very soon.